Welcome, everyone, to our Fairfax County Office of Elections Chiefs Briefing for our 494 Chiefs and Assistant Chiefs for the November 2nd, 2021 General and Special Elections. We're so happy to have all of you with us tonight. We're obviously doing our Chiefs Briefing in a little bit different format than we have in the past. We hope this will be a little bit more convenient for you and gives all of you the same information at the same time. So I'm very pleased to be joined by a number of Office of Elections staff tonight. We have our General Registrar and Director of Elections, Scott Konopazic, Assistant Registrar for Absentee Voting, Cheryl Jones, Assistant Registrar for Satellite Voting, Helen Tchaikovsky, Voter Registration Supervisor, Bushra Ardalan, IT Manager, George Panagakos, our new HR Manager, Blanca Arciniega, Clerk to the Electoral Board, Beth Methfassel, our Election Manager, Eric Spicer, Election Inventory and Supply Manager, Kay Garrison, our Voting Equipment Manager, Tyrone Allen. My name is Robbie. I serve as the Election Officer Manager, the Election Officer Assistant Coordinator, Alina Selnick Escobar, and a couple members of my team here, Vid Wen and Linus Bambaka. So as we get started, I'd like to turn it over to our General Registrar and Director of Elections, Scott Konopazic, to welcome all of you.
Hello, everyone. I wish I could see your faces right now. This is one of my favorite events in an election cycle, is to be able to sit down and visit with those of you who have stepped up to serve their community and be in charge of their precinct on election day. So, Robbie, can you hear me?
Yeah, Scott, we can hear you great.
Okay, just saw a couple of things flashing in the chat. So this is a very important election. I think everybody knows that. Everybody's heard that, and I think we all know that every election is really important. One of the things that has already transpired so far is voters are turning out in great numbers. We're really gratified, surprised, happy that voters are voting at the rate that they are. We've had about 125,000 people vote already, and we're not even near election day. So I imagine things are going to be pretty busy on election day as you guys are administering the election there. I think you guys have picked up on a couple of changes that we've put in place. I just want to reiterate that the reason for these changes is to increase the security, the accuracy, and transparency of our election. All of our processes are geared towards those three goals. As a side benefit, hopefully we are making things a little bit easier for you and help streamline the process and speed things along on election night. Everyone's aware that we are changing our election night reporting program slightly. You guys are an integral part of that. We will be primarily reporting election results this election from the electronic media that you remove from your DS200s at the end of the night and send off with the couriers who are bringing both the electronic media and the absentee ballots dropped in the drop box. As well, this will be the last time I have to add numbers in on election night, which should really speed up everybody's night and make it a little bit less stressful at the end of a long day. So please, we're counting on your help and cooperation to close your precincts correctly when they're closed and the tapes are printed, to remove the electronic media, and to send those couriers on their way right away. So I just want to remind everybody that COVID is still here. We see evidence of that every day. We have the county has its COVID requirements in place for all county buildings that indicate that anyone in a county building, county facility has to wear a mask. And we know that conflicts a little bit with in some people's minds about the right to vote. And I think we've given you some clear instructions on how to handle those types of situations when they come up. But as election officers, you need to know that you need to wear your mask all day long. Another thing that's a little bit unique this election is the political parties are making a very concerted effort to have authorized representatives everywhere, at every location on election day, observing every process. We've had them all throughout early voting. We've had them observing processes in our office. And largely, everything works out fine. They don't get in the way and everything goes smoothly. But occasionally, they push the envelope. And I just want to tell you, from my perspective, that you have my support when you exercise and make decisions according to the rules and laws pertaining to authorized representatives. We don't want you to get run over, but we don't want you to be too aggressive on you either. So I want you to make sure that elections continue undisrupted at your location every day or all day long. And that might look a little bit different than what it's done in the past. Let us know if you have any questions as situations come up. But on the other hand, we don't want you to hesitate at all if a situation develops where you feel the need to call local law enforcement because the safety of someone is in danger, or somebody has done something to cause voting to stop. Those are kind of the two triggers for calling law enforcement. And please call, if that need arises, please call law enforcement first and then call us second and let us know that you've done that. So that's kind of a negative way to wrap up my comments. But I want to put a positive on it. People are interested and invested in the outcome of this election. We have the honor of being public officials charged with the responsibility of managing the wheels of democracy in our Commonwealth and also in our nation. So I take great pride in that. You should take great pride in that. What we do and what you stepped up to do is very, very important. And I wish you election day. And I want to thank you all again for your willingness to serve your community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. So with that, we're going to go into the remainder of our briefing. We're going to start with Eric Spicer, our election manager, to take you through an overview of some of the high-level items for this briefing.
Thank you, Ravi. And thank you to everybody for your service. We've got almost 400 participants on this Zoom session. And of course, we have about 500 chief and assistant chief officers. You are the most important part of this process. We really appreciate it. The first slide is about something Scott already talked about, but I'll reiterate: security, accuracy, and transparency. Those are the driving forces for everything we do. We make every effort to have everything we do open and transparent. But as Scott mentioned, that can never conflict with the security or accuracy. Those are paramount. So it's a balancing, and we trust you. If you have any questions, please let us know on election day or before election day. Every precinct is going to get ballots equivalent to 75% of your registered voters. We ordered that large amount to make sure there is no chance you're going to run out of ballots, because this time it's especially important. You will get unique ballots at every precinct. They're different at every precinct. You'll get ballots that are two-sided, and this time they'll be padded and stubbed, which is terrific because we're not going to have loose ballots all over the place, and you're not going to have to count the ballots. So that'll be very important. The contests will be governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, House of Delegates, and there's a bond issue that's on the back of the ballot. So it's very important for your ballot officer to remind voters, every single voter, that there are two sides to the ballot. That's important for them to look at both sides because the bond issue will be on the back of the ballot. And before I get into this slide, Tyrone may say more about this later, but as it says in the overview section, it's very important for you to set up, and this is what we're going to do going forward, to make use of all equipment. We're going to have 2 DS200s and 2 express vote machines at your polling place. It's very important to set up all machines and also however many poll pads you have. We're not using the express votes as much as we have in the satellites. The satellites, we've done this because, and you may have heard about that, because we have precinct specific ballots for all voters, 249 different styles at every satellite. Nevertheless, it's very important for you to set up all of your equipment. Now, getting into this a little bit, our action plan, you will have clear acrylic sneeze guards. You'll get somewhere between 4 and 8 sneeze guards. Most places will have 6. They will use at your check-in tables, your ballot table, and the chief's table. You'll also have face masks for election officers and voters. As Scott mentioned, it is mandatory that all election officers wear face masks, and we'll get into a little bit more about voters in just a moment. We also have a set of clear face masks that can be used if you need to communicate with individuals that are hearing impaired. We also give you disinfectant wipes to clean surfaces as needed and hand sanitizer. You're required, as I mentioned earlier, to wear the face mask while serving on election day, but you're not required to document COVID-19 vaccination or be tested before the election. Voters will be strongly encouraged to wear a face mask. We found almost all voters at the satellites have been wearing a face mask, but you may get some voters that do not wear a face mask. You'll ask them to wear a face mask and offer them one. If they don't want to do that, next you would offer for them to vote outside. They would not be a curbside voter. You would simply be going outside to help them vote so that they wouldn't come into the building. Therefore, it wouldn't be an issue that they didn't have a face mask. And you do that in a nice, friendly manner. Hopefully that'll work out. If it doesn't, lastly, the right to vote is paramount. So you would let them come into the polling place, vote in the voting room, even if they didn't have a face mask, and not make a big deal of it. You can, if there are other voters in the room, you could just hold them off to the side, separate. Let the voter that doesn't have a face mask vote off to the side, kind of hold the line. And again, if you have any questions about this on election day or before election day, please just give us a call or email us. You're going to have those absentee ballot drop boxes at every polling place. Each polling place will receive multiple precincts. Locations where there's more than one precinct at a location will share a drop box. Please place it near your building entrance or voting room entrance. This is at the chief's discretion. Of course, taking into consideration the weather and other factors that are unique at each polling place. An election officer, most likely the greeter, must monitor the drop box at all times. We've had some chiefs ask, can that be the page? It cannot be the page. That's not a function that can be performed by the page. Monitoring the drop box has to be an election officer and has to be, of course, at all times, all day long. If they take a break, somebody else needs to take over monitoring the drop box. Per guidance from the Virginia Department of Elections, voters from anywhere in Fairfax County can return completed absentee ballot envelopes in a drop box at a polling place, at any polling place. Doesn't have to be their polling place. Voters may deposit more than one envelope in a drop box, and voters do not need to present ID before depositing envelopes in the drop box. We have a picture here of the drop box, and in your supplies, you will have received a replacement sign, which is very important for you to change the sign that's on the top of the drop box, because the old sign references the old envelopes on the the absentee ballot envelopes, section B. So you definitely need to replace that because we have changed our absentee mail process. Okay. Scott already talked a little bit about authorized representatives. We expect most precincts to have authorized representatives. There may be a large number. There are only elections in November this year in New Jersey and Virginia. So we think we'll get a lot of attention. Authorized representatives at the polling places must submit a written authorization form, and they must be registered voters in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Authorized representatives can move around the voting room, but they can never disrupt the voting process. We say here they should not. I would change that. They cannot. That's paramount. You cannot let them. That's in the state law that they cannot interfere or obstruct the election process in any manner. Use your common sense and judgment to balance the rights of authorized representatives with your duty of maintaining the security, accuracy, and integrity of the election process. They cannot take pictures or video. Inform the authorized representatives that they're not permitted to interact with voters. Let them know that they have a right to observe the election process, but they don't have a right to become part of the process. If they have questions or concerns, they should direct them to the chief, or if the chief designates, to the assistant chief. And if they have complaints or concerns beyond normal procedural questions that can be addressed immediately, tell them to address those issues to their party representatives. In other words, try to work things out with them, answer questions, but don't spend a lot of time. Your main focus should be on the election. I think that's it for my part.
Thank you, Eric. We're now going to go to Kay to talk about election supplies.
Hello, I'm going to talk to you about election supplies tonight. The assistants this time will not be picking up their supplies, as most of you already know. It'll be in the chief's kit, and the chief and the assistant can get together and decide when they're going to pick that up. And if they're going to wait and do it on Monday, or if they've already done it, that'll be up to them. But the assistant chief will still get a packet of his keys, and he'll still get the election notebook. This is your supply list. You have one for the kit, you have one for the bag. So make sure you're looking over both of them. I have been getting some calls that are saying, oh, we don't have this and that. But technically, as I told most of you when you came in, there were a lot of changes this time. A lot of things that were in the kit are now in the blue bag. So please try to find it that way. But also feel you can always give me a call or email me. I'd be glad to help you with whatever I can. I kind of just said that, but anyhow, that's on the left there is the black rolling kit, and on the right is the blue bag that we're talking about that has the supplies in it. The clippers normally, as most of you know, used to come in the blue bag, but since the blue bag is now in the big gray cart, we weren't able to keep them in there, or you wouldn't be able to go to your polling place on Monday, and you wouldn't have anything to uncut the seals with. So we had to move it to your kit. It's on the very top of your kit, and it's just like those coin purses that we had from last time, and the pliers or clippers, whatever you want to call them, fits in there really nice, and that's where you can keep them and put them back in there when you're finished. And as Eric was talking about, the new sign that should go on the drop box, and you see circled there what's different about it. So make sure when you go to your precinct that you check that out and replace it with the sign that we gave you when you came in to pick up your supplies. You got 2 number 4 envelopes. One of them has the seal up in the right-hand corner with your precinct name and number, the date, and the kind of election it is. The other one is just a spare. I don't know how many spoiled and surrendered and void ballots you're going to get. So I tried to give you another envelope just in case you have to use it. But if you don't, just leave it like it is and put it back in the kit at the end of the night. And as usual, we always have those people that like to write on plastic. I don't know why, but they do, or put stickers on it. Please don't do either one of these pictures. They're both really hard to get the markings off the plastic, and the stickers are very difficult too.
All right, thank you very much, Kay. So I'm going to take you all through some items for before Election Day. So first off, please make sure to review the Chief's notebook before Election Day. You want to be familiar with the contents so you know where to look on Election Day if a situation arises. We sent a PDF version to all chiefs and assistant chiefs last week. It's also available on our training website. So you can go to training.electionofficers.com and view the Chief's notebook there. All the information you need to know on election day is in the chief's notebook, but you're welcome to call us before or on election day if you have any questions. We have made significant changes to the notebook this election. So for example, there are 2 new sections of the notebook, one about acceptable IDs and one about the statement of results. We've taken some information that was in other sections, augmented it, and put it in these new sections, but be aware there are new sections. We've also renamed one section. As Eric was talking about authorized representatives, you may have noticed that we don't refer to them as poll watchers anymore. We are using the term that's used in the Code of Virginia, which is authorized representatives. And so that's why that tab is now called authorized representatives. And there are also a handful of pages that may have been moved to a more appropriate section. But again, if you have any questions or you can't find something that you know is always in the notebook, feel free to give us a call. One thing that the chief should have already done by now is to contact all of your election officers. We have assigned 6 to 11 officers per precinct. And in fact, what we've done is assigned almost all precincts 1 extra officer. So if one of your officers cancels before election day, we may or may not replace them. Your officers include the chief, the assistant chief, your regular officers, your language officers, who are individuals who have been assessed for their language skills and can help voters who may primarily speak another language. You have your collector officers. These are what we formerly used to refer to as our absentee ballot collectors, but they are now called collector officers. And the collector officers do all the same regular officer duties during the day. The only thing that changes is that at 7 p.m. on election night, their one and only responsibility is to get the absentee ballot envelopes from the drop box counted and secured, and to receive the USB flash drives from the DS200 scanners in a purple pouch and immediately drive them to the Fairfax County Government Center. So the same function as what they had last election, just a new title, collector officers, to reflect that they are collecting 2 items. And you may have high school pages. There are about 175 high school pages assigned for this election. So about half of all precincts received 1 or 2 high school pages. And you received a printed roster with their names when the chiefs picked up their supplies. And we also sent out a list of all the high school pages in an email last Friday. And again, if you're a chief and you have not already made initial contact with your election officers, please do so immediately after this briefing. They are reaching out to us in the office, wondering when they're going to hear from you. You're always welcome to contact them again a second time before election day. In fact, we encourage it. We suggest you contact them first a week or 2 before election day, and then again a day or 2 before election day to confirm that they are still going to attend. Next, the chief wants to make sure that they contact the polling place this week. And the reason you want to do that, and you can use the information from the polling place info sheet, is so that you can verify what time you can go to do your setup on the day before the election, and so you can verify who to call at 5 a.m. on election day if your building is not open. It's also really helpful if you are a first-time chief or it's the first time serving at a particular polling place to visit the facility the week before the election, meet with the contacts, see the voting room, verify the voting equipment has been delivered, and just generally feel more comfortable with everything. That also allows you to provide more helpful information to your election officers. Now let's talk about an important update for this election. As you all learned in our operational and procedural updates class, we do have some updated procedures for how we're using and operating the poll pads. The biggest change is that we are no longer using the iSync drives to update the voter file on the poll pads. Instead, we've given the poll pad case to the chiefs. If you've already picked up your supplies, you already have it. And for those of you coming tomorrow, you'll receive it tomorrow. We're going to ask you to do one simple thing on the Sunday before the elections. That's this coming Sunday. And you can do this anytime after about 9 a.m. You're going to turn on a mobile hotspot. That's the picture in the bottom right there. Turn that on first. Then turn on all of your poll pads. Then all you have to do is wait a little while, possibly 30 to 60 minutes, until the poll pads receive the newest voter file. And I'm about to show you on the next screen what that's going to look like. Once they've received the newest voter file, then you turn them back off, you put them back in the case, and you're all done. And the great part about this is by making this update and updating your voter file on the Sunday before the election, it is one less stressful thing to worry about on election morning. Because your poll pads, you will know, and we'll know in our office, that you've already updated your voter file. Now, when you go to do this on Sunday, if you do have any issues, email us. We won't be in the office that day. We do want to get one day off before we get ready for the election, but we will respond promptly on Monday. Hopefully, 90% of you won't have any issues whatsoever. And those of you that might have some issues, we will be able to assist you first thing on Monday morning. Now, if for some reason you're not able to do this on Sunday, you can do it on Monday. But we strongly prefer that you do it on Sunday, so that way you do have time to get this all resolved. You're not trying to juggle it before or after work. And we'll provide some more detailed instructions by email a little later this week. So what exactly will the screens look like? So let's take a look. So when you first turn on the poll pads, you may get this red cloud icon up in the top right on Sunday. Excuse me. And the reason that you may get this icon is because your poll pads are not connected to the mobile hotspot device. So make sure you've turned on the mobile hotspot at the same time that you turn on your poll pads. And again, I want to stress that even though this is a different procedure than what you've done in the past, it makes life easier for you because all of this eliminates the iSync drive process. So let's go to the next screen. And once you've turned on your MiFi, your mobile hotspot, excuse me, and your poll pads, you'll see that green cloud icon in the top right. You're not done yet. The green cloud icon means the device is connected to our central election database, but it may not have picked up the updated voter file yet. What you want to do is tap on that green icon, and you'll see this screen right here. It'll show that the poll pads are downloading the updates from the central election database. And you can see at the bottom of that modal window, it's a little bit dim. That's how it shows up on the poll pad, but it will say currently syncing. And again, it may say this for up to 60 minutes. We hope it's a lot shorter. In some precincts, it may be as little as 5 or 10 minutes. But that message will show you that the poll pads are currently syncing. Once they finish syncing, this is what the window will update to. And you can see that it will show a last sync time. What you're going to look for is to make sure that that last sync time is after Sunday at 9 a.m. because that means it will have picked up the latest voter file, which George is going to update first thing on Sunday morning. The reason we have to wait till Sunday morning is because we want to make sure we've processed all the voters who voted absentee the day before on Saturday, the last day of absentee voting. So again, let me go back and recap this for just a moment. You're going to turn on your poll pads on Sunday. And again, this replaces the iSync drive process. You don't have to worry about the iSyncs. If you've turned on both your poll pads and your mobile hotspot, the devices will automatically start picking up the updates. You'll wait potentially up to 60 minutes for them to download the updates. Eventually, you'll see this screen that shows that the last sync time was sometime after Sunday at 9 a.m. And then you're done. Then you can power off the devices, put them back in the case, and you're all set. The most important thing is to remember to bring the poll pad case with you on election day. So that is the Sunday update process. And again, we will provide more detailed instructions by email a little later this week. So what else do you have to do before election day? Well, the day before the election, that's this coming Monday, the chief is going to receive the sheriff's envelope at their home. This envelope is delivered by the sheriff, so you don't have to be home. It'll be dropped off near your front door. If you haven't received it by about 3 p.m., please let us know in the office. And if you're not going to be home to verify receipt of it, ask a neighbor, a friend, or family member, see if they can drive by and take a look. Now, one important change, the closed books report and the final absentee list, which used to be delivered in the sheriff's envelope, will instead be delivered by your rover, either when you set up the day before the election or on election morning. So don't fret if you don't see those documents that you're used to seeing. The other big thing you'll do on the day before the election is set up your polling place, of course. And if you have any questions or issues, call office staff. We'll be here until at least 6 p.m. on that day. And if you can't reach us, you can also call your rover. If it's a facility-specific issue, your rover is definitely the person that you want to try calling first. All right, it's election morning. What do you need to do at 5 a.m.? Well, all of your officers should arrive by 5 a.m. Please make sure to verify those officers are on your final precinct roster and then swear them in. Sometimes we have officers that accidentally go to the wrong polling place, and we want to avoid that. If any of your officers have not arrived by 5:30 a.m., then give us a call, and we may have reserve officers that we can send as replacements. But again, since we assigned an extra officer in almost all precincts, that may not be necessary. And please remember that when you're calling the office, always provide your precinct number and name. For example, 100 Patriot, not Lincoln High School. As Eric noted, it is imperative that you set up all of your voting equipment. Everything we've given to you, all of your DS200s, all of your express votes, and all of your poll pads, should all be turned on and operational. In terms of your express vote, make sure to place it in a prominent and accessible location near your other voting booth. And do let your rover know before Election Day if you need more extension cords. For your DS200s, remember you're going to set both of them up. You have the option, if you're in a smaller precinct, you can set both of them up and maybe turn one away from the voters, but otherwise let them vote on both machines. And what you want to make sure you do is to seal the DS200 ballot compartment anytime the ballots are inside. So when the DS200 is delivered to your precinct, it won't have a seal there, but on election morning, you'll apply a seal. And then you're going to record that seal number on a new section of the machine certification form. So you can see here in this image, they've recorded the seal numbers for the seal that they placed at 6 a.m. on each of their DS200s. If for some reason you need to remove that seal during the day, for example, if you have so many votes that you need to deposit those ballots early in the process, or if there's maybe a machine jam, then you would remove that seal. Once the issue is resolved, apply a new seal and record that number on the machine certification form. So we've given these spots for 4 seals, potentially, but hopefully you won't need them. Here's a big update that I want to make sure you're all aware of. We want to help resolve the most pressing issues during opening procedures between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. And what we want to do to help you and to help us with that is we want to prioritize the most important calls. And those are the ones that prevent the polls from opening at 6 a.m. So when you call, we're going to ask, what is your emergency? Because if it's not an emergency, if it's not something that prevents you from opening the polls at 6 a.m., then it can wait. Call us after about 6:30. So what are some examples of things that are not necessarily emergencies? Well, one that you may not expect is that, for example, if only one piece of your voting equipment isn't working, that's okay. That's why we give you 2 DS200 scanners, 2 express votes, up to 6 poll pads. If only one of those isn't working, that is not going to prevent you from opening the polls at 6 a.m. because your other machine or machines will be operational. So again, we realize this is a change in procedure. We're going to make sure you're all aware of it. This is going to help us focus and help those of you that are having the most pressing issues preventing you from opening at 6 a.m. So in your Chief's notebook, both in the during the day section and in the handout section, we provided election officer function descriptions. And what you want to do is take the second copy that's in the handout section, and you can remove them and place them in different areas of the voting room, like the check-in table or the ballot table. These are just like the position descriptions you used to have, but we now call them the function descriptions. The reason that we do that is because some precincts, especially smaller ones, some election officers may assume multiple functions. For example, the same officer may be the greeter at the front door while also monitoring the drop box. Or the election officer that is monitoring the voting booth may also monitor the DS200 scanner. So that's why we now call them function descriptions. Let's talk about accessibility. It's very important to be mindful of accessibility when setting up the voting room. You want to make sure that you maintain clear paths of travel. It's also really important that in the morning, doesn't have to be before 6 a.m., but soon in the morning, you verify the path of travel for voters requiring accessibility. So if you're the chief or assistant chief, we're asking you to walk from the handicapped curbside parking spots from there to all the way inside the voting room. That will help you see the path of travel for a voter requiring accessibility. And you can make sure there's adequate space and signage. One thing to be aware of for this election is that the Disability Law Center of Virginia has contacted and notified us that they expect to visit many precincts to assess their accessibility. These visits will be short, only 10 to 15 minutes, and DLCV staff will not engage in any partisan activity and just kind of review and see how your polling place is set up for accessibility. Remember, there's an accessibility section of the Chief's notebook with lots of helpful tips. Okay, let's move to during the day. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Alina.
Thank you, Ravi. We're going to get started with some information about the poll pads. I want to start with just some reminders from the operational and procedural updates class, which I know you've all taken, but I just want to go over the highlights. As a reminder, you now may take the poll pads outside for curbside voters. If you want to review those procedures, you can go back to the OPU class and check that out, but you can take the poll pads outside. There is no iSync drive, as Ravi mentioned. You're going to do that import process on Sunday. So there's no need for the iSync drive. That's one less thing to worry about on Tuesday morning. A couple of other things that I've updated with the poll pads is that there will no longer be a poll pad printer, and we have not designated an admin poll pad. This gives you a little bit of flexibility. You may keep all of your poll pads at the check-in table if you're at a busier time, and if you need to take a poll pad to the chief's table to handle a non-routine voter or to look something up, you can simply take it away from the check-in table. Just make sure that you're keeping those devices charged when they move from their main location. So if they go out to curbside voting, or if you take them somewhere else in the room, make sure you're plugging them back in so that they have charge. The second thing that I want you all to be aware of, important update, is that the Virginia Department of Elections recently canceled the pilot program enabling poll pads to sync with the central election database on election day. That's just for election day. The pilot program was only concerned with election day procedures. That's why we can update the poll pads on Sunday using the mobile hotspot device. So again, I just want to reiterate, the mobile hotspot is not to be used on election day. The poll pads are going to sync as they have done in the past. So they'll sync with the local devices. That's all the devices in your precinct. So you should be keeping those within 30 feet of each other to sync. You can take it away, you can travel to go to curbside voting or to go to the chief's table. Just make sure that you bring it back at some point so that it resyncs. Please note that the chief's notebook was printed before this change. It was a very recent change. So we'll be sending out instructions on how to open and close your poll pads in your sheriff's envelope. So just keep that in mind. Again, I just want to emphasize that the hotspot devices are going to be used on Sunday to update your voter file. So still no iSync drive, still one less thing for you to worry about on Tuesday morning, but they are not to be used on election day. Your poll pads are only going to communicate with the other devices in your precinct. This is a screenshot of what your poll pad will look like on election day. It's going to look just like if you do not have the hotspot device turned on at home, that little red cloud. You may see this red cloud telling you that you are offline, and you may not see a cloud. Both of those are fine. That's just indicating that it's only communicating with the devices in your precinct and not with the central election database. All right, let's move on to ballots. Eric went over the ballot allocation, what they're going to look like. If you've worked at the early voting locations, the process is going to be a little bit different. You're going to offer each voter a printed ballot. Of course, keep in mind that any voter may choose to use the express vote instead, and you would then hand them an express vote card. Something that is new and exciting is the padded and stubbed ballots. Please use your ballots in order. So you're going to receive several pads. Each pad is going to have 50 ballots. Use pad 1 first, pad 2, pad 3. That's going to make it very, very easy for you to know what ballot you are on, how many ballots you've issued. So in the first pad, you'll see it says pad 1 at the top, and then as you tear off ballots, you'll see ballot 1 of 50, 2 of 50, so on. So you won't have to do any counting. The ballots do all the work for you. If your ballot officer accidentally tears a ballot from the pad, that's okay. Just spoil the ballot and issue the voter a new ballot. Just be careful when you're ripping them. They are pretty robust, so I don't expect you to have any issues, but if you do tear one, just spoil it, issue the voter a new ballot. The stub is going to be what remains once you tear off all those ballots and issue them. You should tear them off one at a time. So when a voter is in front of you, that's when you tear it off and issue them. Please do not pre-tear them and pre-stuff your privacy envelopes. That will make the counting a lot more accurate. Again, the counting is going to be done for you by the stub. At the end of the day, return all stubs with the first box of unvoted ballots. So when you put those unvoted ballots in a box at the end of the day, put all your stubs in that box. They'll come back to us here in the office. All right, moving on to turnout surveys. I know a lot of you are familiar. I just want to bring your attention to this. Like in the past, we're going to ask you to complete turnout surveys at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. We'll send you a text message reminder, but this is a change. We will not call you. If you have any issues submitting the survey, that's okay. We want to get as much information as we can, but we want you to be present in your precinct and dealing with any issues that arise during the day. So if you're unable to submit a survey, that's okay. Just get us on the next one. Again, we'll text you reminders shortly before 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. All right, your Chief's notes. Another thing that I know most of you are familiar with. Just want to provide a reminder. Any issues, problems, anything of note, please write it down in your chief's notes. We do read all of them. The electoral board reviews these as well. This helps us assess any issues that happened on election day, anything that you think could be improved on, anything of note, just not note it down in your chief's notes. Of course, if you have something pressing that needs immediate attention, you can always give us a call, but make sure you document everything in your chief's notes. We do take a close look at those after election day. The other form I want to draw your attention to is the election officer evaluation form. If you did not serve in the June election, this is going to look a little bit different to you. We used to provide one sheet of paper for every officer in your precinct. We hopefully have simplified this for you. You just have one piece of paper, one form for all of your officers. The instructions are on one side and then the form itself is on the reverse. Please try to complete this before 5 p.m. Gets a little hectic during closing if you're trying to juggle doing an evaluation form while you do your closing procedures. And again, it's just gonna be one form. It goes in the envelope and that goes back in your kit. All right, we're going to briefly go over non-routine voters, just a couple of things that I want you all to keep in mind. The first one is something new. When a voter brings an absentee ballot to the precinct, you can always remind them that they have the option of using the drop box. In the past, you may have written absentee spoiled on it. We've now changed this and are going to ask you to write absentee surrendered. Why is that? It's going to reduce any confusion that you have between your spoiled ballots and your absentee surrendered ballots. So the voter still has the option of exchanging their mailed absentee ballot for a ballot that they can vote on election day. But for accounting reasons, we're going to ask you to write absentee surrendered. That way, at the end of the day, when you're doing your counting, you'll write all of the spoiled ballots down on the SOR. It gives you all the instructions there. Your absentee surrendered ballots will clearly be a different category. So this is something that is new and different. I want everybody to keep this in mind. If you have an absentee voter, a voter who received a mailed absentee ballot and they'd like to exchange it, instead of writing absentee spoiled to reduce any confusion with spoiled ballots that are occurring in the precinct, just write absentee surrendered on that ballot and follow the same procedures of exchanging that for a new ballot. The next thing I want to talk about with non-routine voters is provisional voters. Remember that anytime you have a provisional voter, you should provide them with a provisional vote envelope, the provisional voter notice, and of course a ballot. This time we are providing you with one envelope. Why is that? Voters who do not have an acceptable ID may now use the ID confirmation statement. So you should have very low numbers of voters who are voting provisionally because of an ID issue. If you do have somebody who does not wish to complete the ID confirmation statement and they'd like to vote provisionally, you can still give them that envelope. The envelope has somewhere where you can indicate that you are issuing this provisional ballot because of an ID issue. So you're going to use the same envelope regardless of the reason. What you are going to retain is the notice. We have two notices, one for ID issues and one for other reasons for which a voter is voting provisionally. So all that's happening is that you're going to follow the same provisional procedures. You just have one envelope and you'll indicate on the reverse of the envelope what the reason is. Another important thing I want to mention about the envelope is that it is crucial that both you and the voter fill out all required fields. So please make sure that you are doing that. Ensure that you are handing the voter their provisional notice, and then of course the ballot. One other important note about provisional ballots is that the electoral board and only the electoral board decides whether a provisional ballot is counted. So you as the chief or assistant chief cannot tell any voter whether or not their provisional ballot will be counted. That's the electoral board's decision. Of course, you can inform the voter of the law, you can help answer their questions, but the electoral board and only the electoral board adjudicates provisional ballots. That's all I have on that. I'm going to go back to Ravi, who's going to take you through closing the polls on election day.
All right, we're in the home stretch. So the first thing that needs to happen during your closing procedures is that your two collector officers should secure the absentee ballots from the drop box in the new trip lock security bags. And we're going to provide some more information about this by email to all of you before election day. We're going to give you a same copy of the information that we're providing to the collector officers. While that's happening, Other election officers should shut down the DS200 scanners, and only after they've been shut down to remove the 4 USB flash drives, 2 from each scanner, seal them in that purple pouch you see, and then give them to the collector officers. Then the collector officers should leave as soon as possible to drive to the Fairfax County Government Center. We want them all here by about 8 or 8:15 p.m. at the latest. Please note that all collector officers must travel in the same car. We've communicated this requirement to all of our collector officers, and they've agreed to do this, so we don't anticipate any issues, but if there are any on election day, let us know. And because they are leaving the precinct early and are not there to assist with the closing documents, they will not sign the statement of results or other closing documents that all other officers must sign. So please remember, the first priority for the collector officers is to receive the 2 items they need, the absentee ballot envelopes from the Dropbox and the USB flash drives from the DS200 scanners, and to get them back to our office as soon as possible. All right, so let's talk about closing the voting equipment. Because the poll pad pilot was canceled for this election by the State Department of Elections, we have slightly different procedures for how you handle your poll pads. In order to streamline our process of syncing those results when they get back to our office, we're going to ask you to not power down the poll pads. This is a change from past elections. So what you're going to do is keep the poll pad app open on the screen of the poll pads and simply place the poll pads in the green case. That means we're making your closing procedures simpler than they've ever been before. Literally, once you are done with the poll pads, take them, put them in the green case. That's it. For the express vote, as you learned in the operational and procedural updates class, it no longer contains a USB flash drive. So all of our instructions already reflect that. We just remind you so you're not stressed about looking for it. Note that the DS200 printer tapes no longer contain the write-in images. So these are saved on the USB flash drive instead. And it's one of the reasons why we want to get those back to our office as soon as possible. So this should also help print the tapes faster in each precinct. And finally, the officers closing the DS200 scanners should then immediately be the ones to remove and secure all voted ballots. We've taken 2 different steps during the closing procedures and combined them into one. One of the things we're going to ask you to do this time is to complete a results worksheet. If you recall from past instructions, we have simplified the statement of results. It's a one-sided, one-page document now. So the part of the statement of results where you were tabulating the different vote totals now happens on a separate document. This is the results worksheet. And then you'll transfer those totals to the call sheet as you always have. If all goes well with the process of ascertaining the voting results from your USB flash drives, then we hope to eliminate the call and results process next election. That's going to depend on all of you and how soon we're able to receive the information back from the flash drives from your precincts. So this is an image of the statement of results. So the way that it's completed is the same as always, but we just want to remind all of you, especially if you are a first-time chief or assistant chief, that this is one of, if not the most important document you complete on election night. And I want to stress that it is in a different section of the chief's notebook. So as you're going through the closing steps, one of the tasks will say, review the instructions in the statement of results section of the chief's notebook. So absolutely do not forget to complete your statement of results. And of course, make sure all officers sign at the bottom. You have these handy checklists in your chief's notebook. You have a couple of checklists that are on blue colored paper in the handout section that indicate what items you need to return in what locations, whether that's the black kit, the blue supply bag, the gray cart, or the chief brings back in their car. And we've added checkboxes to these forms to make it a little bit easier for you. We also provide you the required signature checklist, which we've updated a little bit to make it clearer to see which documents all officers sign and which documents some officers sign. Please use this checklist. And in fact, during closing procedures, one of our new tasks is for you to assign someone to be a signature officer, for them to go and check that all these documents are signed properly. So now you'll have the chief and another officer, the assistant chief or someone else, verify that all documents have all required signatures, because I hate having to call people in after election day to come to our office just to sign a document. So please be your hero and have 0 missing signatures. There are 5 items this election that the chief is going to return in their car. Those are the black rolling kit, the green poll pad case, the number 3 cardboard boxes containing the voted ballots, and the number 6 cardboard boxes containing the unvoted ballots, And then that windshield sign, so we know what precinct you are when you pull up to our office or to one of our other return locations. It's very important that you call or text your rover when you leave the polling place. Our rovers can't end their day till they know that you've all left your precincts. So please make sure you have all 5 of these items before you leave and that you notify your rover when you're ready to leave. You don't have to wait for them to respond, just let them know. In the past, we've had 2 different return locations. This time we've added a 3rd return depot location, and that is the North County Government Center. So please be aware that we have about 70 precincts, the ones that are closest to the North County Government Center, that we're going to expect to return there instead. We want to make it a little bit easier for you by providing a location closer to you. So make sure you review page 10.2 of your Chief's notebook that has this list of which precincts we think are returning to which return depots. If you want to return to a different location instead, that's fine. Just make sure you email us by this Friday to let us know so we know where to expect you. For those of you that are returning here to our office at the Fairfax County Government Center, please be aware that we have 2 different return areas, one for chiefs and one for collector officers. And this map is printed in your chief's notebook. The collector officers are coming towards the middle of the building, the front of the building, the middle entrance, and returning the materials there. The chiefs, as always, are coming to our loading dock. So if you are facing the building, the road that you get there is all the way on the left side. So please take a look, use this map to help you. We'll have some signs and folks directing you to get you to the right location. We want to help streamline that process and save you time. And I should point out that because we now have a 3rd return depot and 70 precincts returning there, that means there will be fewer chiefs returning to the Fairfax County Government Center, which means the line should move faster and you'll be done sooner. Okay, as we close out this briefing, I want to remind all of you that the way that you receive credit for watching this briefing is by taking a simple 1-question quiz in the election officer portal. So once we're finished here, go to the election officer portal, you can do this now if you'd like, complete the 1-question quiz. It is due by Thursday, October 28th at midnight. So please make sure you take care of that right now so that you don't forget. Now, if you have questions that we haven't answered, feel free to submit them. We do see all the questions you've submitted so far, and we're about to answer as many of those as we can before we finish up. As we do that, as you submit your questions, I'd like to invite my fellow office supervisors to share any updates about their area. So before we get into each of them, Scott, is there anything additional that you would like to inform our chief and assistant chief officers about?
No, I think you've done an excellent job, Ravi and Alina and Eric in explaining things. I've been monitoring the questions, very good questions. I want to make sure that everyone gets their questions answered before the evening is over. So I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Some of our other supervisors, Tyrone, Helen, Cheryl, Bushra, George, Blanca, and Beth. We'll go in that order. So Tyrone, do you have any updates that you'd like to share about voting equipment or rovers? Can't quite hear you, Tyrone.
Can you hear me now? Okay. First, I'd like to say thank you to all of the chiefs and assistant chiefs who are serving in the election this time. We greatly appreciate you and the efforts that you exert here and for all that you do to make this election as safe and as accurate and transparent as possible. Want to remind each and every one of you that every precinct is receiving 2 DS200 machines, and to express votes, you need to turn on all of your machines. Even if you're not going to use them, turn them on and then turn them around so that they're not facing the public, but they need to be on and ready to go in the event that one of the machines has a problem. Second, tech command. If you do have some issues, if there are some emergencies, if there are questions that you don't quite understand, can't find the answer in your chief's notebook, call tech command. We are there. We are ready. That number is on the back of the first page of your book so that you can reach us and have ready access. We'll try to get you the information that you need. And as another result, we have the route rovers who will be coming to see you first thing in the morning. They'll have some information for you. They'll be back to visit to see how things are going. And of course, they'll be there to help you through your closing process and make suggestions for the evening for you to shut down. You'll have their contact numbers. So in the event that there are any problems or issues that arise during the course of the day, you'll be able to contact someone directly. Someone will be able to contact you. And of course, there's always tech command. Regional rovers will be there in case there are machine problems and issues, technicalities, if the machine has to be replaced or something. So we are fully ready to assist you to be as successful as you can in your precincts. And that's about all I have. Thank you very much once again for all that you do.
Thanks, Tyrone. Helen, do you have any updates to share about satellite voting?
Yes, hello. It's great to talk to all of you chiefs. I want to say it's a very exciting election season. I am the Assistant Registrar for Early Voting Satellites. And many of you have probably already voted at an early voting satellite. I will tell you that voting is very, very brisk. People are really excited and want to vote this election. So far, we are probably at 76,000 people who have voted early. So it's a very exciting time, and I wish you all happy election day. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Cheryl, do you have any updates about absentee by mail? I don't think we can hear you, Cheryl.
Oh, I'm pulling a Tyrone. We have mailed a lot of absentee ballots, 82,217. That's the second highest we've ever mailed in Fairfax County. Of course, last year the presidential was the highest, and we've received about 54% of those back, a total of about 45,000. So we're expecting a lot more back. There's still a lot in the mail, or people are still making up their minds. There have been a few questions about the drop box and how I'm returning absentee ballots for the drop box. One question was whether the voter can take the ballot out of the return envelope to put in the drop box. No, no, no. We have to know who that ballot came from. And we have had just naked ballots in drop boxes before, but that doesn't help us. Every ballot has to be related to a voter. And when that envelope comes back in, we mark in the statewide database that we received a ballot from that voter. This is, I think you have it in your manual, but this is what the envelope looks like. Let's see, can we see it? There we go. The front, and on the back is the voter statement that used to be on a separate envelope inside the ballot. I mean, inside the envelope, but it's here. And the voter should have filled it out with their name and their address, a signature, and what's really important is a witness signature. And voters may ask you about this before they put it in the box. In the last two elections, the need for a witness signature was waived because of the emergency declaration because of the pandemic. But that's over. The emergency declaration is over, and now the voters do need a witness signature. So if they stop and ask you, is this okay? Does it look like it's filled out completely? You know, you might be sure to say it needs a witness signature. And, oh, and you notice there's a hole. Let me see, there's a hole here. And people ask, well, what is the hole for? And it helps us because we know that there's definitely not a ballot in that envelope once we've extracted the ballots and taken them out. And another question we're often asked is, are the absentee votes counted, the absentee ballots? Yes, they're counted. And when you see that number when you see the results on Tuesday night, you can tell your voters this, when they see those numbers on Tuesday night for absentee, it's going to include all the absentee ballots we've received up to that point. So they're included with all the results. So I think that's all. If someone has any questions.
All right.
Let
We're
me
getting
know.
lots of questions, and B and Liza are going to direct them in just a couple
Okay.
minutes as we finish up the updates. Bushra, do you have any updates about voter registration? Bushra, we can't hear you.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, much better.
Good evening, everybody. This is Bushra, I'm voter registration supervisor. Thank you for all your hard work on election day. I just want to talk about registration. Our registration is complete. We process all our online application and voter registration application. The only registration that we receive is for active military personnel. They are eligible to register and vote up to election day. Please do not hesitate to call us if you couldn't find a voter on poll pad. Just right now, I was helping an angry voter because last year, November, the chief couldn't find him, so he voted provisional, even he was registered. So we have other way for searching. We can use the virus that is not available for you guys. So please, if you couldn't find a voter on poll pad, call us. We are here from 5:30 to end of the night to help you to find the voter, to help the process of voting easy for you and for the voter too. If you have any question, I'm more than happy to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Bushra. Let's go next to George to provide you any updates about IT.
Hello there, my name is George. I have two things that were coming up a lot in the questions. I just want to re-emphasize, so the MiFi that's being provided will only be used on the Sunday and Monday prior to the election. It will not be used on election day. And so what we're trying to hope to do here is get the devices updated Sunday, Monday, the import date. Usually we would look at the import date on the poll pads, and we would see that and say that this is the same date and time of the election. This time, the date of the import, and especially for those that have already looked at the devices and have noted that, that import date is going to be the LNA testing date. So what we need to reference is the sync date, and that's going to be under the cloud icon. So we'll be able to see that under the cloud icon. So if you see that import date on the top left of the screen, and you see that it's not matching the November 2nd, don't be alarmed, that's fine. So that's a big change from how the poll pads have looked in the past. I have two kind of procedural questions that I'm not sure if I'll answer them myself, but I just want to throw them out there for us, the panelists and so forth. One question that's coming up a lot is, after the poll pads have been updated, can we store them in the gray cart on Monday or so forth? And the other question is, do we need to seal the cases?
Thanks, George. We're going to go to Blanca and Beth in a moment, but I'll answer those questions. So if you have completed the poll pad update process, you can go ahead and lock them up in the gray cart if you would like. You don't have to. And we are not using seals on the poll pad cases this time because we can see whether or not you've updated them before election day. So you don't need to seal them. So with that, let's go to Blanca, who is our new HR manager. She just started last week and is joining us right in the thick of this election. We're so happy to have you. Blanca?
Hi, everyone. Good night. Thank you very much for all what you do. And thank you very much for being so late. And I know we are tired, but I am learning a lot. I am very excited. And I just want to be sure that I am here to support you. If I will not have the answers right away, I will do my best to have the answers as soon as possible. So thank you again very much and good night.
Thank you, Blanca. Next, Beth, who is the clerk to the electoral board. Do you have any updates that you would like to share with all of our chiefs and assistant chiefs?
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, but we can't see you.
Okay, I know, I'm sorry about that. My video is being a little bit difficult, but I just want to say that you all covered everything beautifully. If there are any issues with polling locations, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you solve any issues that are challenging prior to election day, but I know you all are going to do fabulously well. And the canvas will commence at noon on Wednesday, November 3rd. And so good luck on election day. You all will do great.
Thank you very much, Beth. I think I got everyone, unless Sonia, Norma, Wes, if you have any updates you'd like to share. Okay, no. So let's get right into all of your wonderful questions. So I can see we have more than 100 questions. We've been trying to respond to many of them in writing. And so if you click on the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window, I think we've already answered 72 of them in writing, but let's take as many as we can during this video. So V, Linus, what questions do you have for us?
Okay, I have 2 questions for Cheryl regarding the witness signature. So are election officers allowed to examine the absentee ballots to ensure they have a witness signature?
Cheryl, we can't hear you.
Sorry. The election officers aren't required to, but I believe it would be good if the election officers are asked by the voters, you know, is this correct? A lot of voters will. They'll show up and they say, you know, this is my ballot. Is it okay if I filled this out correctly? Then, you know, you can say, yes, do you have a witness signature? Do you have your signature? Some people may stop to chat and you could say, just be sure you have a witness signature and a signature. But I don't think the election officers have to act as gate guards and ask to see each person's envelope when they show up.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Next question for you is, are election officers or poll watchers allowed to serve as a witness?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, witness just has to be 18 years old or older and not the employer.
I have 2 questions here, probably for Kay, regarding supplies. The first is, are you providing the form for the provisional voters list used at the check-in table?
Not this time.
Okay, if I can just add on to that, if you don't mind. So as I believe Alina mentioned, because for this election, we're only sending out one type of provisional envelope, that's the regular provisional, not the no ID provisional. We don't need the provisional voter list at the check-in table anymore, because voters who arrive at the polls without an acceptable ID can now complete an ID confirmation statement. So the law still permits them to complete a no ID provisional, but it is exceedingly rare now. I can't remember exactly what it was last election, but it might have been only one county-wide. So you shouldn't have an issue of a voter arriving without an ID, completing a provisional, and then potentially arriving later in the day. So we no longer need that form.
Okay, and we have another question. When and how will we be getting our rover information?
The rover information should be on your roster that you get up in the right-hand corner. I think it is the printed copy.
V, Linus, do we have more questions, please?
Okay, I have a question about setting up the polling place. When you're setting up the polling place, will we still need to arrange the tables so that there are 2 tables between the check-in officers and the voters?
We are going to leave that up to you, the chiefs. So we are not making that a requirement. If you have the resources and would like to, you are more than welcome to. We are providing those sneeze guards that we mentioned, so we do want you to set those up. But look at what works best for you in your precinct.
Okay, I have a good amount of questions regarding poll watchers. The first one being, can poll watchers challenge voters?
So I just double checked on this just to make sure I had this right. Yes, authorized representatives, what formerly were known as poll watchers, can challenge a voter. Almost any individual can challenge a voter. It's not very common that it happens. It's a pretty rare occurrence, but yes, they can.
And I'll just chime in on there. This is actually a very good question because it takes you through a couple things in the notebook. If you look in your non-routine voter situation section, it references this. And it also references, you also see in the sample forms, the form, the affirmation of eligibility, because in that case, if a voter is challenged, they have the opportunity to complete the form and to vote routinely.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, next question about poll watchers. Is there a way to verify someone who presents themselves as an authorized representative? Or do we just use our judgment in deciding if the form they provide looks legitimate?
Thank you. That's another very good question. In this case, we know that some of you have looked them up before with your poll pads. That is not necessary. The important thing is they have to have the poll watcher authorization form. Beyond that, you do not have to verify it. If they have a poll watcher authorization form that is from their from one of the political parties, then you should take that as their authorization to be a representative.
Next question, how do we handle unruly poll watchers?
Really, that's a very good question, and it's a common sense sort of situation. You want to diffuse it. You want to be polite and respectful and recognize that although you may be very, very busy, representatives, political representatives, formerly called poll watchers, they are an important part of the process. You know, it is a political process. They have a right to be there. They have a right to walk around. Sometimes that's a question that comes up. Can you just make them sit somewhere? No, they have a right to walk around and to observe. But very importantly, they do not have a right to become part of the process. Most times, if you reason through that with them and you can show them the requirements, you can show them the do's and don'ts that are in the back of your notebook. You have do's and don'ts for political representatives, and you can. But so hopefully you can diffuse it. If they do become unruly, if they do become difficult and to interfere with the election, that's when you would call the police. I think we got a couple of questions that the individuals thought we were saying, call the police right away. That is certainly not the case. Scott indicated that's something you do as a last resort. And that's something we want you to have. Definitely have that, because if situation is interfering with the election, unfortunately, you need to get the police involved. We've been meeting with the police to make sure that we have proper security. But first, you want to just try to diffuse the situation, try to be reasonable and make things work out. So certainly, we're not saying go to the police at every moment, just as a last resort.
Thanks, Eric. And following up on that, can you go over what the specific triggers are for calling the police and what phone number they should call?
That's a situation. Scott has really been a great influence. You know, he's had close to 30 years of experience with a lot of situations like this. And no, we don't want to give you specific triggers because we want to give you the opportunity to use your discretion. We'll certainly back you up. As Scott said, you have our full support. You have his full support. But we can't say if A, B, C happens, then you call the police. What we can say is if ever you feel threatened, if ever your safety is threatened or the safety of voters, certainly then you would call the police. Short of that, let's say somebody's raising their voice or speaking rudely, you wouldn't just call the police real quickly. You would only call them again in a threatening situation and a dangerous situation. The phone number, this is another good thing for your notebook, a reference. At the very beginning of your notebook, there are some important phone numbers, and that is one of them, the emergency phone number for the police.
Let me add something to that, to what Eric said. He captured it very well, but I will add one more situation. If anything happens that causes voting to stop and voters not to be able to continue voting, that is a trigger or a basis of calling local law enforcement in order to get voting resumed. So personal safety, view the voters, your team, and also if voting stops. Those are two absolute times that it's clear you should call up the law enforcement. Anything else is really, as Eric said, your judgment, and we trust your judgment, and we will support you in whatever decisions that you make.
Thank you, Scott. And last question, or one of the last questions regarding poll watchers. If a poll watcher comes, do we need to record that they came in our chief's notes?
No, you're not required to record that in your chief notes, but you will retain, you're going to get the authorized, the statement from them, and you'll retain that.
Okay, and I have one more question regarding COVID. Can chiefs ask their election officers whether they are vaccinated or not?
No, that's a very good question, but they certainly cannot ask if about the vaccination status.
Okay, Eric.
Let me add
up-
that let me just add that that's why it's so important that everyone at the polling place on election day wear their mask continuously, and that everyone is meticulous about that, because we don't want to require people to declare their vaccination status. On the other hand, we want to keep everyone safe and have good COVID hygiene practices.
Okay, thank you. And then Eric, earlier when you mentioned if an officer doesn't wear a mask, asking them to vote outside, could you please clarify that and what the difference is between voting curbside?
Okay, you said officer, I think you meant as a voter. First thing, the vast majority of voters, they're going to come in with a face mask. If they don't, this is a really good change that Scott brought to us. In the past, we didn't give a voter a mask. Now, we definitely would offer the voter a mask, and most of them would accept. But in the case, if they will not accept a mask, they're not wearing a mask, as Scott said, that's paramount, need to wear a mask. Then what we would do is ask them to vote outside. Now, it's a distinction. I saw some of the comments, some of the questions. People say, if they vote outside, then that's a curbside voter. No, this is definitely a unique situation. Curbside voters are voting at the curb. This individual, in that case, we would vote just outside. It wouldn't have to be at the curb. It is not a curbside voter, and you wouldn't note it in your poll pad where you would know curbside voters. This is a voter that just because they don't have a mask, they're going outside. The next thing, we've done that in the satellites, that has worked very effectively, but it can come up that they refuse to do that. And again, this is a very rare situation, but what you do next is let them vote inside the voting room and just have them vote off to the side, that hold the line. So which means either have the voters off separate from this particular individual, or actually stop the voting momentarily. Just get them through as quickly as possible. And again, using your judgment.
Okay, following up on our face mask policy, what if the precinct location has a requirement to wear a face mask? Does that supersede all other directives?
I'll take that one. So as we've communicated many emails to you and to all of your officers, there is a strict face mask requirement for all election officers to be able to serve this election. Every election officer must wear a face mask. So I want to be very clear that if you have an officer that arrives to your polling place on election morning and they're not wearing a face mask, remind them immediately to wear their face mask. If they refuse to do so for any reason, let us know in the office immediately, because unfortunately that officer is not going to be able to serve. So I want to be very clear about that. That is a strict requirement. All election officers must wear face masks while they're serving on election day.
One more thing while we're on our favorite subject, PPE and face masks. I saw one of the questions was, can the election officers wear a clear face mask? We only have a very limited supply. The requirement is to wear a face mask as I'm wearing, or a face mask, cloth face mask that you might bring from home. The clear face masks that I mentioned earlier, those are specifically for situations where you may have somebody that needs to read lips. So that is not for the use of an election officer, because that's their preference. The clear face masks are only for situations where it's required because of reading lips or something like that.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Following up on masks, the elections office is providing masks. However, can officers just bring their own?
Yes, they can.
Next, we're going to move on to the collector officers regarding the drop box. What is the approximate capacity of the drop box? How many ballots can it hold?
Helen, I wonder if you want to chime in on this. We've seen robust use of the drop boxes at our satellite locations. Do you know how many they can accommodate?
In the drop boxes?
Yes.
It can hold a lot. I really don't know.
Yeah. So let me jump
They're
in here and
huge,
speak
so I
from
don't know.
some. I can speak from some experience using drop boxes over many years, because I know it's a new thing here, but the drop boxes we have could probably accommodate nearly 1,000 ballots. So I don't think there's going to be any issue with any drop box on election day exceeding capacity. And I saw that there's another related question, and I'll just jump in here on it since I'm speaking. How many ballots can a voter deposit in there? And there is no limit on the number of ballots that a voter can drop in there. Okay, there is no limitation, there is no restriction. Many people don't like that. Many people think it's not a good idea, but we've clarified with the State Board of Elections, there is absolutely no limit or enforceable way of keeping people from putting ballots in the drop box. I will remind all of you that once the ballots are received here, the envelopes are reviewed to make sure that the voters actually qualify and that the voter's statement is complete and has all the required information. So there is a secondary review process to make sure that the votes are being cast only by qualified voters. So keep that in mind, that there's a secondary process, and in the meantime, there's no limit to how many ballots anyone can put in the drop box.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Next question is about where to place the drop box. Can the drop box be just placed inside the polling place room?
So I think we talked about this a little bit during the operational and procedural updates class. So let's reiterate. You want to place the drop box at a location that is ideally most convenient for voters, but also works depending on the unique circumstances of each of your polling places. So we hope you'll be able to place it outside the building, which would obviously be the most convenient location for voters. And then obviously you'd have to have an election officer monitoring that drop box. Be aware that a high school page cannot be the only person monitoring a drop box. By law, an election officer has to be the one monitoring the drop box. But they can help with other things. They can greet voters, they can monitor other things. Now, if you're not able to place the drop box outside the building for whatever reason, then you would want to place it somewhere near your voting room entrance, which would be the location voters would be looking for next. So yes, at the chief's discretion, you can place it at what location makes the most sense for you, but ideally that is the location that also makes the most sense for voters.
Thanks, Ravi. So next question is about collated precincts. For instance, if a chief does not see any collector officers in the roster, does that mean that they are in a co-located precinct?
In short, yes. Let me go into this a little bit more. If you are in a co-located precinct, so that's a building that houses 2 or more precincts, you should have received an email with a contact list. It will have the name of the other chiefs in your building, so you can communicate with them. You may want to coordinate your setup time so that you can both meet with building staff and inspect the voting room or rooms. And the other thing that's on that list that is very important is it'll indicate which precinct is responsible for the drop box. A good way to know is if you have collector officers. If you have collector officers, there'll be 2 of them on your roster. You have a drop box and you are responsible for monitoring the drop box during the day, emptying the drop box at night, and your collector officers will take the USB flash drives from the DS200 and the voted absentee ballots. Now, if you're in a co-located precinct, and you do have those collector officers, the other precinct in your building will not have collector officers. What that means is that your collector officers are not only responsible for your purple pouch, but they should also take the purple pouch from the other precinct. So in short, each building is going to have one drop box. How will you know who's going to monitor it? Whatever precinct has the collector officers. It doesn't have to be the collector officers themselves who monitor it, but that is the chief who's responsible for organizing that operation. That precinct that has the collector officers is going to be the one that takes both of the purple pouches. So make sure that if you're in a co-located precinct and you do have those collector officers and you're monitoring the Dropbox, that you coordinate with the other chief to collect the purple pouch. All of these instructions are in the email. We have about 17 locations that are co-located. So if you have any questions, send us an email, give us a call. We can go over the details of all of that if you're not sure what your responsibilities are. But again, check your email. We have a detailed list of who's doing what and what you should do. It's a great question. Thanks, V.
Cheryl, I see a question here about from a few different officers. They want to know if an election officer is asked to be the witness for someone dropping off an absentee ballot, what are their obligations? For example, do they need to check the ID of the voter?
Well, let me read what they're actually signing. Is this a statement of, oh, hold on one second. I'm sorry.
Sure. We'll come back to you in just a second.
I've got the Uokava one. There's no requirement to check an ID. Thanks. Okay, here we go. This is what they would be signing. The statement of absentee voter. I do hereby state, subject to felony penalties for making false statements pursuant to the Code of Virginia. My full name is, and that's where they fill it in. And I've now been a resident of, and they fill that in. That I have received the enclosed ballots upon application to the registrar of such county, that I opened the envelope marked ballot within, and I marked the ballot in the presence of the witness without assistance or knowledge on the part of anyone as to the manner in which I marked it. Then about assistance forms. Then I sealed the ballots in this envelope, and that I have not voted and will not vote in this election at any other time or place. I swear or affirm under felony penalty for making willfully false statements or entries that the information is provided on this form. If an election officer feels that they are able to sign this as a witness, it's not for us to say one way or the other, but the election officer is not obligated to sign as a witness. I know that's a little gray, but you can always tell the voter that they need to take this back and get their, or they don't need to, but you can suggest that they need to take this back and get their witness to sign it. Again, the election officer is acting as an individual when they sign this. They're not acting as an election officer, so they make an individual decision as an individual. Is that clear as mud?
Yes. Yep. Thank you, Cheryl.
You see what I'm, yeah, just remember, you're not doing this because you're an election officer. You're signing as an individual, and it's your decision as an individual.
Thank you, Cheryl. We have a question for Beth. How does someone apply to become a high school page? I think Beth may be away for a moment. I saw a question for Scott. One of our election officers has seen something in the news about a lawsuit involving the Office of Elections. Do we have any additional information that we want to share with our chiefs about that in response to anything that they may have seen in the media?
Hey, Ravi.
Oh, pardon me. I was saying I just have bad timing when I ask questions. So we'll circle back to those two. George, do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to the, let me look at the right camera here. The previous question, I believe I just had tried to provide an answer. If you go to our website, there is a page specifically regarding the the election page program.
Yes, thank you, George. Yes, there's definitely a page on our agency website with more information about the high school page program. I think we lost Scott for a moment, so hopefully he's trying to rejoin us. I think Eric's got something.
Hello, I've been looking through the questions and just one I wanted to address. Well, first I want to say thank you to the chief who said they used the express vote at one of our satellites and found it just a tremendous experience, really successful. That's what we've been hearing a lot. Helen has done a great job and her staff. The express votes have been used. It's been fantastic. Part two, the chief said that they were going to offer this to all voters on election day. Please don't, because K is only, at this point, we're not doing that. We have made a conscious decision to focus on it at the satellites. At the precincts, it will be available for anybody, not just the individuals with accessibility issues, but we only give you 110 express vote cards. So please be very careful. And we certainly don't want you to advertise this to all voters because that could cause more confusion. So it's terrific. The express votes have been very successful, and perhaps in the future, good chance we use them much more at the polling places. But for right now, we're not doing that.
Can I jump in on that? Ravi, can I jump in on that?
Yeah, yes, of course.
Okay. The reason we're doing it at the satellites is because we want to know how the voters vote from their location. On election night, all the satellites are lumped into one, all the voters are lumped into one pool. And it's becoming a larger number, and people want to know, well, how did people vote from this and this precinct in early voting? And we didn't know that. So by using the express vote, we can count the voters by precinct and the results by precinct. Now, that's not really necessary at the precincts because they have the same ballot and they can do the results by precinct. But at the early voting, that's why we ended up doing express vote, because we are going to be reporting by the precincts.
So Ravi, I got bounced out of the meeting for a minute and I've come back in. Is there was a question about
Yes, one of our chiefs asked a question. They saw something, a lawsuit in the news, and they wanted to know what that was about.
So the lawsuit is about is the basis for determining if someone is eligible to be sent an absentee ballot. And I can't really say more than that. There is a court hearing on Friday to resolve the issue. And all I can say, and what I want everyone to know, is that we determine eligibility of voters to receive an absentee ballot based upon the requirements in the Virginia Elections Code. And anyone who says that we're doing it otherwise is not correct. Was there something else about express votes or voting by precinct or something like that?
I think Eric and Helen took care of that one. Just a question about how we handle express vote cards versus printed ballots in the precincts.
Just to bring you in the loop, Scott, we did address it, but it was a chief who said they had a really successful experience using the express vote at a satellite, and they were going to offer it to all voters on election day. And I said, we're not really at that point quite yet. We're only giving them 110 express vote cards, and that we're just at the precincts, we're following the same practice we have in the past.
True. However, if a voter is interested in voting on the express vote, please allow them to do it.
I'm seeing a lot of questions from multiple officers, and I'll turn it back to Ian Linus, about how we handle unmasked voters in the case that they are going to vote outside the polling place. So I just want to take a moment to address that. So if you, or Eric, did you want to address that? Okay. So in terms of the procedure for that, so remember, first, any voter that arrives without a face mask, you should ask them to wear a face mask, and you can offer them one from your supplies. If they decline that option, then the second step would be to ask them to vote outside. And what you can do is you don't have to ask them to go back to their car, but you can walk outside with them, take a clipboard and a ballot and a poll pad outside, and conduct the process just outside the building, just the way you would otherwise for a curbside voter. So I hope that clarifies that procedure. And of course, if the voter declines that option as well, then they would be permitted to vote inside their voting room. And at your discretion, you may hold the line or ask them to vote on a particular side of the voting room, as Eric detailed earlier. So I hope they answer some of those questions. I'm trying my best to answer a lot of your questions in writing as well. So please do take a look at the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window for more questions that we may not have answered on video. B, Linus?
I just have one question about high school pages. Can high school pages help distribute the ballots?
Beth, do we have you back? And would you like to answer that?
Yes, hi. No, pages may not distribute ballots.
Short and succinct. I love it. By the way, I noticed some of you mentioned that you're having a little trouble accessing the quiz for this briefing to receive credit for attending it. If you have any issues whatsoever, just send us an email. It was just a one-question quiz to verify that you've watched this briefing. So if you send us an email, we'll take care of it for you. V, Linus?
Okay, next question. We're going to circle back to Cheryl about the witness signature. So is the witness signing only that they are witnessing the signature of the voter? Okay, I'm going to jump and go to Kay. Kay, could you please go
Sorry,
over?
I'm here. I'm sorry. I turned off the video and the mic. My staff just swept back away that form. I think the best advice is for you to read what you're signing before you sign anything. The voter is told that they're supposed to have a witness when they open their envelope and a witness when they're voting their ballot. Whether voters do this or not, of course, we in the office have no idea. What we're concerned about is that there are two signatures on the form. You're signing under penalty of a felony. Read what's on there. And again, I can't advise you to do it or to not do it. You're acting as an individual. You're witnessing their signature, and that they have said that they have followed the rules and that they filled the ballot out themselves. If you don't feel that you can sign that because you don't know if they filled it out themselves, then don't sign it. You know, it would be difficult, I think, for anyone to do that, you know, just sight unseen when it's presented to you, because you are signing a legal document.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. So we're going to jump to Kay. I'm seeing a few questions asking about if we could go over what's in the sheriff's envelope this time around.
It's going to be a little different this time since we don't have the close of books and we're not going to have the iSync or the absentee ballot. Absentee ballot list, final absentee ballot list. I'm tired, people, I'm sorry. You will have a last minute memo that Eric will provide. You'll also have some your name tags. There's the cell phone numbers that you've given us, that'll be in there. It'll be a variety of things like that you some of these questions you've been asking about, where's this, where's that, they'll end up there. The poll pad information instruction sheet, how to open and close it, will be in there. And your windshield sign will be in there. But keep in mind that, you know, that's kind of where we put things that come up that we may not have known about when the notebook was printed. Remember, it's printed ahead of time. So somebody I saw had asked about the Dropbox sign. That was not ready. We didn't find that out with the new information until after the notebook was printed. So things like that come up, we have to put in that last piece of information that goes out to you.
Okay, I know you've all been patient with us. Let's almost wrap this up. Dee, do we have any last questions?
Yes, this is about returning materials. So do chiefs need to bring back the blue bag?
The blue bag is going to go in the gray cart this time. It will not be returned to the government centers or the depots.
Okay, here's another question going back to collector officers. For instance, if collector officers finish their job early when they return materials and go back to the precinct, and the precinct has not finished closing yet, are they allowed to come in and help? Yes or no?
You guys have some really kind officers. We really appreciate their help, but unfortunately, once they've left the polling place premises, they can't come back and assist as election officers. So I think we'll wrap up on that note. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join us tonight. We hope we provided all the information you need to serve as a chief or assistant chief in this election. We hope we've answered most or all of your questions. Of course, if we didn't get to something you asked, feel free to call our office tomorrow or just send us an email and we'll make sure to get back to you. Scott, is there anything else you'd like to say to all of our chiefs and assistant chiefs before we let them go?
No, other than I would just once more like to thank them for their service to their community. But mostly I would like to thank the staff for their tremendous effort in getting prepared for this election and preparing all the information and in presenting it tonight. You guys have done a wonderful job. Great job. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Scott. It's definitely a big team effort. And we're so happy to have all of our office supervisors and other staff to join all of you as chiefs and assistant chiefs today. The last thing, just don't forget, if you haven't already, go and take that one question quiz in the election officer portal. So we give you credit for attending this briefing. With that said, thank you so much. We're so happy to have all of you with us. Have a great election day and have a good night.